It's time to certify, develop, connect, and advocate. So let's talk small business with the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council and your host, Stacey Key.
Hi, this is Stacey Key, your host for this edition of Let's Talk Small Business. We're very fortunate today to have with us Lamont Robinson of Nielsen. Lamont presented at the State of Minority Business a national discussion and shared with us information about the buying power of minorities. When we come back from our break, Lamont's going to jump right in and share with us information and the impacts minorities have on the buying power. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If every marching band play my song and every choir sing along, then maybe we can change the world.
Let's Talk Small Business is sponsored by AT&T, Georgia Power, a Southern company, Coca-Cola, and the Cox family of companies.
Meet David. David is the proud owner of Roses Are Red, a local gardening center. Like most small business owners, David wears a lot of hats, from president and CEO to chief accountant, head buyer, head of sales, marketing director, and on and on. It's a lot of hard work, but David loves gardening and making his customers happy. David knows that advertising is crucial to his business, so when he has a good quarter, David buys a variety of new ads, including television commercials during his favorite programming. He stretches his budget to get the most exposure possible for his money. When sales don't increase the next week, David is frustrated. He questions why he went to all the trouble to advertise at all. David cancels the rest of his unaired commercials and wonders why advertising never works for him. This is Tina. Tina owns and operates Violets Are Blue, another local gardening center. Like David, Tina wears a lot of hats to keep her small business thriving. Also like David, Tina knows that advertising is crucial to the success of her gardening center. But unlike David, Tina doesn't try to wear all of the hats all the time. Tina works with a media consultant to create a personalized plan for her garden center with a calendar and a budget. They know that April is National Garden Month, and they target March as an ideal time to increase their awareness. Tina and her consultant identify television networks that Tina's customers watch. They pinpoint specific dates and make Tina's media buy based on reaching her target customer, rather than running lots of ads on the networks or programs she enjoys. Tina airs a high-quality TV ad and gives it time to build momentum. She also uses social media and mobile offers to enrich her TV commercials. With a long-term plan in action and a consultant to help her along the way, Tina relaxes and focuses on doing what she loves best.
So remember to plan in advance. Make a calendar of important dates and events.
Advertise within content that your customers watch, not ones that you prefer.
Be patient with your strategy and give your plan time to build awareness.
Focus on reaching the right audience with the right message, not the number of times your ad runs.
And most importantly, let the experts help. Work with a media professional to personalize a plan for your business so you can get back to doing what you love most.
To connect your business with a media professional you can trust, contact Cox Media today.
We're back with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen. Lamont, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And so Nielsen is big and bad, and they do everything. You know, they're the household name around the buying power. And we were very fortunate to have you at our State of Minority Business and share with us a little bit of information about the buying power and impacts minorities have. And so today, before we get into the Nielsen, you've got a fascinating story to tell.
Thank you. Thank you.
So take a minute and let's hear the Lamont Robinson story. What's been your journey? How did you end up in Nielsen?
Well, you know, my story always start out the same. So anybody that knows me, it's always going to be the same, and that's on the west side of Chicago. So
oh, wow.
I grew up in the housing projects on the west side of Chicago and, you know, had an opportunity to, and I say opportunity, I think a lot of folks growing up in a situation like that, they may focus more on the negative elements of it. But for me, it was an opportunity. So growing up in housing projects gave me a chance to really be able to see what life was about in that type of environment. And so, my background in supplier diversity actually was originated in that type of environment.
So that's where your roots come from.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Because for me, I didn't see business owners that looked like me. And so for me, subliminally, it was telling me that I couldn't own a business. So when you don't see people that look like you owning businesses in your neighborhood, it's telling you that you can't own it. So not until I saw the TV show The Jeffersons did I realize I can own a business. So it took TV to really help me to see that it was possible for me to own a business. So that's where my story always begins, on that west side of Chicago housing project.
Oh, excellent. We want to thank South Side of Chicago for bringing you here to us.
Thank you.
So you saw that you could own a business from the Jeffersons. And so tell me how you got from that to Nielsen, because you've had an interesting journey in supply diversity.
So, coming from that environment, I was fortunate enough to get in a program called A Better Chance. And so ABC takes academically gifted inner city kids and place them in the better high schools around the country. So I left home at the age of 14 to go to a high school called Lower Merion, right outside of Philadelphia. And for the basketball fans, that's where Kobe Bryant went. He came 2 years after I did. So I kind of put us on the local map. He kind of took it global after that. So, but getting in that program, number one, I wouldn't be here today talking to you if it wasn't for that program. So that program allowed me to be able to, number one, get a better education. The second part of it is it allowed me exposure into various cultures as well as economic levels. And so having that type of exposure and then coming back home, that's when I started seeing the disparities that existed in the neighborhood that I didn't see when I was in that neighborhood. You only know what you know when you step out and you come back in. And so from that moment on, I thought, you know what, there has to be a better way to help our people. I didn't know what it was. Initially, I thought I wanted to be an accountant. And so, I used to watch TV programs, and I think I just so happened to see a guy that was an accountant. He had a business suit on, and so I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's what I want to be.
That's what it is.
I thought all business people were accountants, but I didn't want to be an accountant. I wanted to be a businessman, but I didn't know that until later on in life. So I went to school and got educated in accounting until I went to my first internship, and I was in the basement punching numbers. I'm a people person, so to put me in the basement punching numbers was not what I wanted to have. And so for me, that's when I thought I needed to find something different. So my origin in supplier diversity began at Abbott Laboratories. I went to work at Abbott in their purchasing department, and I had an opportunity to present. And so they had an individual there named Will Stewart. And Will was about to retire, and so he pulled me aside and he said, "Young man, I want to teach you how to do my job. This thing called supplier diversity. I knew nothing about it." Will invited me to go to the NMSDC, National Minority Supplier Development Council conference in Chicago. This was in I think it was 2005. I went and I wore my hand out writing things down. I just said, "This is it." I felt like I was
you were
at
home. You were at home.
It incorporated everything I was looking to have in a career. It allowed me to be able to do things to help, people that grew up in similar environments that I grew up in. And in essence, it helps the little man overcome the big man. So that's how supplier diversity really spawned from my life.
Now, we talked about this at the State of Minority Business. Supplier diversity has taken some roads. It's not the same. This space is changing. And so through your journey, tell me, some of what you've seen in the supply diversity space. Because from 2005 to now, things are different. It's not the same. The space is expanded. We've got the browning of America. So there's some changes going on.
Well, the funny part of it is you definitely have the browning of America, but in supplier diversity, you're starting to see more diversity in it. So when I first came in, you only saw African Americans, leading the positions of supplier diversity. But and nowadays, you have folks from all various colors and ethnicities that are in supplier diversity. So for me, the change is going from a concept that was about spending. It's not just about spending anymore. Now it's about revenue generation and business development and things of that nature, instead of just focusing on what we buy from the products and services that they offer.
Excellent. So when we come back from the break, I really want to focus on, you talked about business development, developing minority businesses. You talked about revenue generation. And so I want to explore some of those things when we come back, because I think as we look at supplier diversity for the future, and GMSDC is really focused on disruptive thinking. We're getting out of the box. We're doing things different. And those are the areas for the future, I think, where supplier diversity really can make an impact. So we'll be right back, and we're going to continue our discussion with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen.
Growth is an inherent part of any successful business. As your business grows, expanding the reach of your network becomes more critical and more complicated. The problem is, the global IT infrastructure can be a patchwork of different platforms and architectures, with varying degrees of quality, security, and reliability. How can you expand your network's reach without exposing your global operations to risk? To achieve this, today's agile businesses are employing comprehensive threat intelligence solutions across networks and gateways to protect, detect, and correct. By turning to a robust network security solution, you'll be able to safely extend your network to global suppliers, partners, and customers. This will enable your business to quickly seize expansion opportunities while minimizing security risk, so you can be open to growth and secure from threats all at the same time.
Hi, this is Stacey Key with Let's Talk Small Business, and I'm here with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen. And Lamont, you kind of dabbled on revenue generation and MBE development. Let's talk about that, because I think as this space continues to evolve, those two things are going to be important, because as corporations continue to look at procurement, it's about revenue, lowering costs, about revenue, and it's about developing your suppliers to the point that they have the capacity to do business with you. So give me your perspective of what does this need to look like from a revenue generation perspective in the future for this to continue to be viable and sustainable?
So anytime I come into an organization, the first thing I do in supplier diversity is to look for what is the culture of that particular company. You know, what is it that the products and the services that they make? Because my thought is, if you don't have supplier diversity integrated with the way that you're generating revenue, then it's going to be difficult for you to have a sustainable program. So what I mean by that is figuring out a way that there's two things: either finding ways to sell your products and services to the diverse communities, or partner with the diverse communities to sell your products and services. And so at Nielsen, one of the things that we're doing is, obviously we're a market research company. And so,
but you're the best at it.
We've been doing it since 1923. So I would hope that we're doing something good.
And you are.
Thank you. So and one of the things that I love that we're doing recently is being able to get out there and really define what the minority consumer is, because not a lot of people know.
And let's talk. And let's define exactly what the minority consumer is. Let's talk about it right now.
So for us, when we look at we've got an external advisory council. So when we look at the minority consumer, we look at it from the perspective of African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American. And so looking at those groups, you have to understand what the trend is. There are 117 million minorities in this country right now. And there are 45% of children under the age of 6 are considered to be minorities. So we talk a lot about the change of the demographics, right, but it's happening today. You see it today. A lot of the major cities it's already taken place. And so for us, we have to get a step ahead of that. And supplier diversity needs to be integrated with that. We can't just sit back and say, okay, we're just going to focus on the products and services from these diverse suppliers. No, I want to partner with our multicultural group and go out there and try to find ways to maybe partner with a diverse market research firm to go out there and do some niche studies on the African American consumer. We're doing another thing right now in the retail space where we're doing an impact study to be able to measure what supplier diversity truly means in those particular areas. So that's what I mean by revenue generation. You got to look at it as a business unit in itself.
Okay. And so the minority segment that because you bring up a very valid point with that, because in this space of supplier diversity, we've expanded what's included in many cases. We've included LGBT now, we've included veterans now. It's not just the ethnic minorities. Others are now in this space, are now included in many perspectives when they're dealing in the supplier diversity organization. What impact do you think that's had?
Well, and we do measure, by the way, we do measure and use as metrics ways for us to look at our spend with LGBT and women and veterans, disabled, hub zones.
Yep.
And the way I look at it is this. It opens up the door for, whether you're an MBE or WBE, it opens up the door for you to be able to look at different areas within the organizations that you're trying to do business with, more so than what you've had before. So what I mean by that is a lot of companies have employee resource groups. And those employee resource groups are typically tied into those groups that we defined previously. So for me, if I'm a woman-owned company or minority-owned company, I want to see how those employee resource groups are engaged with those organizations. That's something that didn't exist, back when I first started in supplier diversity. So how can we get more engaged with them to be able to develop concepts or develop ways to introduce products and services to the broader communities?
And you talk about the employee resource groups. Now, to the average consumer, would they have exposure to those resource groups? Or is that more internal focus to help provide guidance to the company in marketing and going after those particular industry segments? It
actually depends on the organization. Now, some organizations have mature employee resource groups where they are coming up with concepts for products. So in the retail space, we've seen examples of that. And you have other organizations that are still fairly new. So for the most part, they focus on the well-being of the employees that fit any of those particular buckets. But yeah, it depends on the association.
Okay, the organization. So let's jump into the buying power of these ethnic groups. Because again, you talked about 45% of the children under 6 are already of ethnic origin, and it's browning more and more every single day. So what is the true impact that the minority consumer has on the buying power?
Well, first of all you have to do is just look around and look at media right now. So whether it's products that are in the athletic world, whether it's what you watch on TV with Empire and some shows that
Power,
exactly, that have huge cast of multicultural descent. So that's when you see that the browning of America is already happening, because these shows are not just niche; they're big for the entire communities.
You know what? I think I saw something recently that said this is the time for African American and or minority shows. You're seeing they're more prevalent. You've got several on, obviously in prime time. Mm-hmm. You're seeing producers. You're seeing writers. This is the time. And so when we come back, I really want to take and understand some of the numbers perspective, what those numbers look like for the buying power. Because, again, it always goes back to the money, and the money has impact, and it's about generating revenue for most of these corporations, which impacts the bottom line. So we'll be right back with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen, and we're going to talk more about the numbers and the buying power and the true impact minorities have on the buying in America.
At Georgia Power, we're here to help.
On the phone 24/7.
And in local offices. You can manage your account online, too.
Sign up for free outage alerts so you can plan ahead.
Find energy efficiency programs to help reduce your bill.
Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Or use our app so you can manage your account on the go.
At Georgia Power, we're here.
And here.
And here.
And here. For you.
I'm here with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen. And so Lamont, let's talk about what those numbers say. What is the true impact that minorities have on the buying power of America?
Well, right now, the impact is over $3 trillion.
You said, is that a T?
And that's with a T, capital T. $3 trillion.
$3 trillion. Okay, so let me ask this some questions. So that's a lot. I wasn't expecting $3 trillion. Mm-hmm. Is there any particular segments? Is it across the board? Are we buying certain things versus other things? What is that? That's a lot. That's impactful.
Well, when you think about, and we actually came out with a diverse intelligence series where it goes deeper into the specific products and services that we buy. But for the most part, and you think about what we like to consume, we're heavily influenced by what we see on television. And so whether that's
they like that. They like that.
So clothing, music is another big area of expenditures that we typically have. We're a group that and when I say we, I mean all minorities. So not just African Americans and Hispanics and Asians, but all of us together collectively, we're heavily influenced by those, because if you think about it, that is what tells our story. Mm-hmm. So we typically like to revolve around things that happen to tell our story. So whether it's music, whether it's a television program that we are drawn to because we see some type of connection. And sometimes it's, like I say, use an example of Empire. Here is a television show that talks about that focuses on music. And so now all of a sudden you got two of our, biggest categories in the sense that we focus on all in one, which is why this show is very popular.
Excellent. And so also in terms of the numbers, tie this to supplier diversity. Also with the numbers, tie the supplier diversity with the numbers. Get that story for me.
Yeah. So when you look at supplier diversity again, and again, you have to look at it from the concept of what I talked about earlier in terms of revenue generating.
Yes.
So in looking at the numbers, the reason why that's important is we know our people. So if I'm Hispanic, I know the Hispanic marketplace.
Yes.
And so why allow a large corporation to determine, how to provide the products and services for that particular group? So that's why it takes large organizations like us to go out there and try to find, those Hispanic-owned companies to go after that Hispanic market. The African-American-owned companies go after the African-American market.
Because they know that space better than anyone else.
Absolutely. Because not only are they owners, but they're consumers also.
Right.
So you're tying both of those in. I also look at the example of Walmart. Walmart coming out a couple years ago with the women-owned label. And I think that that is going to lead to more customizing, if you will, as some of these retailers to be able to go after specific segments because they see the numbers out there.
And so, and I'm glad you mentioned the Walmart because I think Walmart has done a very good job in understanding who their true consumer is. Mm-hmm. And women is who shops at Walmart. And so they decided to just take and parlay that into woman-owned label and really kind of close the loop with the consumer and the business owner and really get that whole focus around women. I like to see that a focus around obviously women of color in the Walmart brand and the Walmart activity. But
and that'll be soon. We actually I mentioned about an impact study that we're working on with a group that consists of Walmart and some of the other retailers. So we're trying to do an impact study of supplier diversity. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a new influx of insight that's going to be introduced to the supplier diversity community on behalf of Nielsen that would allow us to see something that's specific to supplier diversity and not just the minority market in general.
Excellent. And so I want to switch gears just a little bit and go back to you've been heading up the Nielsen program. And so talk a little bit about some of the initiatives and or things that you've done at Nielsen specifically around this whole space. If there's some things, I know you've got a lot of things in the hopper. Mm-hmm. Anything you can share with us in terms of best practices or things that you've done at Nielsen?
Well, the major thing is, number one, our spend is not $1 billion overall. I'm just talking about overall spend. So we can't strive to be on the $1 billion roundtable. So what we try to do is to look at ways that we can utilize our assets to help the diversity community. Absolutely.
Yes.
So one major thing that we're doing right now, matter of fact, the press release should be released today, is we're working with the New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Council, and I know that we can work with yours as well.
Terry, now I tell you, Terry Clark is awesome.
Yes, he is.
He's an awesome individual,
and most of it is because our headquarters is in New York,
and it makes sense.
So we've got an internal group called Consumer Activation, and so what they do is they find ways to in a sense, display the demographics and other insight to small businesses. So what we did was we utilized that same formula, and we are utilizing the New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Development Council to basically conduct a series of workshops starting next month that will allow us to be able to show the MBEs in that particular area how to use our insight to penetrate marketplaces.
And I think working with the New York, New Jersey Council is outstanding. Not to mention, that Georgia's the number one state for doing business, number one for African American business. There's lots of number ones. Again, if you're looking for another market to partner with, let me suggest that Georgia might be the go-to state in the future.
Well, I did speak today, so I think that's step one.
We're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Just saying, not taking anything away from Terry, however, but Georgia's big and pretty bad. I just want to go there.
Absolutely.
So when we come back, we're going to continue down this path with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen about the buying power, about the things that are going on with Nielsen, and then how our MBEs can really leverage some of the work Nielsen is doing to help them in growing their business. So we'll be right back. We're back with Let's Talk Small Business with Lamont Robinson of Nielsen. So Lamont, we're going to switch gears here a bit, and you've got a book out there.
I do.
Let's talk about that book. It's pretty interesting, pretty provocative.
Well, the title itself is very provocative, and that was for a specific reason. So the title is Transformational, and then the subtitle is Journey of a Bastard. Transformational, the reason why that is prevalent is because in my life is because it's two words, it's transform and nation. So the purpose of it is to basically go out there and help to transform nations one soul at a time.
And that's part of that journey from Chicago.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent.
Absolutely. As well as a movement with me and a few of my friends through various forms of art. You know, we try to change souls out there. And then the last one, the most provocative part is Journey of a Bastard. And what that means is basically I grew up without my dad in my home. He didn't know about me. He and my mom had a relationship. And I won't even say that it was a relationship. But what I get from that is the fact that I was able to be born into a situation like that with a father that didn't know I existed, but not use that as an excuse to fail. So instead, I turned that around. And so growing up in the housing projects could have been the end for a lot of folks. Growing up without a father, again, could have been the end for a lot of folks. But what I did was I flipped it. And I said, I'm not going to let a title define who I am. I'm not going to let an environment decide who I was. I had a strong mother, and that was all that I needed. And so she gave me the strength that I needed in order to be able to get out of that situation, even though she herself did not know how to get out of that situation. She left it to her baby, me, to be able to come up with a plan to not only help myself, but then to turn around, and she knew that I would be very interested in helping others.
Excellent. And so your book lists 12 disciplines that will bring you to success. Why don't you share a couple of those?
Well, the first one I'm going to go to is actually the last one, and it says, if it is to be, it is up to you. That is based on, we had a 7th and 8th grade teacher named Mr. Bottom, and Mr. Bottom used to always tell us, if it is to be, it is up to you, is up to me.
Yes, I have. Yeah, that's exactly right.
If it is to be, it is up to me. So what he meant by that was, if we wanted to get out of the situations that we were in at that particular time, it was going to be up to us. We could not sit back and wait for somebody else to give us success. We couldn't kick our feet up and wait for somebody to come with the box with the bow on top and say, hey, this is success. So he knew that it was going to be up to us. And so when I would go through my journey, which went from the housing projects of Chicago to this school, as I mentioned earlier, in Philadelphia, Lower Merion, through the Better Chance program, I knew that I had to do that. And I knew that it was going to sacrifice relationships, specifically with my mom, again, with me being the baby of the family. But I knew that all of us had to be on board, which we were. So Mr. Bottom inspired me to be able to push myself, knowing that if I had to, if I wanted to succeed, it had to be up to me. Another one of my disciplines that I always love to talk about is understand your brand.
Absolutely.
Too many times folks don't understand they've got a brand. Mm-hmm. And so that brand allows you to be able to come into a room and folks may not even know you, and they see something that's attached to you. They see certain qualities about you. So when I go out there and I speak to the young folks out there, I try to let them know that, look, you have a brand, and that brand could help you, and it could also hinder you. So I'll be real quick in this example. My brand saved my life. When I was growing up in that neighborhood, the summer before I went to the high school program in Pennsylvania, twice within a period of 2 weeks, I was pulled over, or not even pulled over, I was right in front of my house both times. The cops came and they threw me up against a car and they claimed that I broke into somebody's car and stole his wife's purse. And, I'm sure I probably look familiar, just like the individuals that actually did it. But the neighborhood came to my rescue. They knew that even though they weren't with me all day, they knew my brand, and they knew that there was no way in God's green earth that I would do something like that. So they pled with the cops for, if it felt like hours. It was probably only, 15, 20 minutes. But both times the cops let me go. Now, the reason why that's important is if I would have gotten arrested, I would not have been able to get into that program, which means I would not be sitting at this table talking to you. So it's important to build that brand and know what that brand is.
I think, wow. I mean, you have an incredible story to share. And as I listen to, you're talking about your personal journey, there's this ties to, the advice. And looking at your 12 disciplines, How would you tie some of those to MBEs in terms of their journey?
Well, that brand is definitely important.
The brand for sure.
Yeah, the brand is important. I mean, you have a lot of MBEs. We had one in particular that, she was a small MBE, and she would always show up at meetings in a Maserati. And I said, you know what? That brand, the brand that you're trying to portray as a small business does not match up to this Maserati. Now, whatever you do at home is your own business, but you've got to understand what that brand is. And the problem that she had is that you had individuals internally that would talk about this Maserati, and they weren't really interested in helping her because they didn't think that she needed help.
Because she's driving a Maserati.
Right. So understand what that brand is. And then I'll use the same one that I used before. If it is to be, it is up to you. So you have a lot of MBEs that would like the diversity professionals to sit back and to really pretty much do everything for them without understanding that work has to take place too. You got to come in and you better be ready. So when that time comes,
do the heavy lifting. You got to do the work.
Absolutely, because that may be the only time that you get.
Excellent. And so, Lamont, I want to thank you very much for joining us. You have been incredible.
Thank you.
This will not be the first time that you're in Georgia, first of all, so I want that commitment.
No, it will not be the first or last time. Definitely not the first time.
It won't be the last time.
I look forward to many more times after this.
Yes, we're actually going to have you partner and do something with us here at the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council. And we really appreciate your contribution and all you added to our State of Minority Business Forum.
Thank you.
That was outstanding, and the insights you provided. And so as we close, I want to thank our sponsors, the AT&T, the Coca-Cola Company, the Cox family of companies, and Georgia Power. For without you, this would not be possible. Thanks again for listening for this edition of Let's Talk Small Business. I'm Stacey Key, your host, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
If every marching band play my song and every choir sing along, then maybe we can change the world. If we start turning around and lend a hand, if we stop laying down and take a stand, yeah, then maybe we can change the world.